Welcome in the latest episode of that SEC podcast. I'm your host, Michael Bratton. Go by SEC Mike on Twitter. And hey, believe it or not, we got some coach clips from several schools across the SEC. We actually have so many, I couldn't fit them all on this episode. So we'll have some more on the next episode to finish the week strong. But hey, National Signing Day, we downplayed it on the last episode. Well, I'll tell you who had a classic National Signing Day, and that was the South Carolina Gamecocks. They were kind of the big story of the day, not only in the SEC, but arguably the country, because they landed the big battle that took place here on Wednesday during the traditional National Signing Day. 5-star Nyckoles Harbor, the athlete, sounds like he's going to play receiver. Could play a little tight end for the Gamecocks, but it was a whirlwind recruitment. The last 24 hours, pretty wild whirlwind here in this recruitment. Classic, as they all used to be, heading into National Signing Day. South Carolina was the early favorite. Then a lot of Oregon momentum, and then going into his decision, it didn't seem like anybody knew exactly what was happening. But live on ESPN here on Wednesday, South Carolina gets the big commitment of the day.
But, with that being said, for the next 3 to 4 years, I'll be committed to the University of South Carolina.
After this announcement, Shane Beamer met with the media. So let's kick it over to him. Some unknowns on where exactly Harbor will play. He's a sack machine. Could play outside linebacker. Could play tight end. I've heard the Kyle Pitts comparisons with Harbor, who's a track star, runs a 10.28 100-meter dash. That's incredibly fast. I mean, they're saying he's 6'6", 230-something pounds. Legitimate Olympic speed. I mean, this guy could be unguardable for the Gamecocks as soon as next season. So let's kick it over to Shane Beamer discussing the road to landing Nyckoles Harbor and where he'll likely start his career in Columbia.
He's a guy, when we first started recruiting him, Sterling Lucas was heavily involved with him because we saw him as a defensive end pass rusher. And then as it went more and more down, Jody got involved with him because we saw him as a tight end. And I think my conversations with Nick as recently as yesterday afternoon, it was more that wide receiver world. Not that he wouldn't be doing some tight end type things, but he's an elite athlete, and he doesn't need to be he doesn't need to have his hand in the ground blocking defensive ends 50% of the time. I mean, we need him out in space, running routes and catching the football. So there'll certainly be some tight end elements that will, or tight end aspects that he'll take advantage of and utilize. But we see him more in space on the perimeter, more in a receiver type role.
Shane, can you just kind of take me through the emotions of what today was like, and when you see Nick put the hat on and announce and sign and do all that, what were the emotions like after what was probably a whirlwind hours?
Yeah, the last 24 hours, really the last 12 have taken years off my life, I think, to be honest with you, Colin. First of all, there's a lot that I shouldn't say overcome, but there was a lot going on here with his situation and the schools that were recruiting him and the opportunities that those other programs presented on and off the field, the track, whatever it may be. So there was a lot that we were in a battle. And next door, up in the team meeting room, we have our core values up there, and compete is one of them. And we competed our butts off with this one. And like everyone that we recruit, emotion-wise, I felt good about Nick all along. I really did. Had an amazing home visit with him last week up in D.C. that we didn't walk out of there until after 11 o'clock at night when we visited with he and his family last week. Felt really, really good. I mean, he hadn't told me he was coming, but I felt great about where we stood all weekend. I talked to him multiple times on FaceTime, Monday and yesterday. Went to bed last night feeling good. I got a message from him, audio message or whatnot at 2:57 a.m. today that wasn't good. And obviously didn't sleep after that as well, laying in bed trying to figure out what's going on and whatnot. And then this morning has been just a range of emotions back and forth, trying to answer some questions. And I think for Nick, it was real. I don't want to speak for him, but I think he all along felt most comfortable here and wanted to be here. It was just, a lot of people that in his network everybody was trying to get on the same page, and there was a lot coming at him too as a young man as well. So the emotions for me were certainly a whirlwind today, back and forth, good and bad. But see him put that hat on was I'll be honest with you, a pretty emotional moment for me. Justin King asked me if I needed some privacy before he wanted to film me, and I told him no. But in true Justin fashion, he was lurking outside my office and then came in there as soon as he announced as well. But I think it's just the emotion, not just of that, Colin, but of all the I met Nyckoles Harbor when I was coaching at Oklahoma, and I went into his high school when he was a freshman in high school. And I've known him since then, know the family, and just knowing what he's about and all the effort that you put into, recruiting somebody. It can be a brutal business from a recruiting standpoint. Great when you get guys, gut-wrenching when you don't get somebody that you've put a lot of effort into, but there was a lot of emotions. But I also knew that no matter what Nick had chosen today, I knew that we had done absolutely everything, from our standpoint, from a work ethic standpoint, to get him.
Well, they say these coaches, they hate to get these calls in the middle of the night. Usually it's because some shenanigans went down. But for Shane Beamer, it was because what almost got away from him. And I read an interesting article. It sounds like Shane Beamer, when he got the South Carolina job, one of the very first offers he sent out was to Nyckoles Harbor. So this is exactly what we mean when we say, these recruitments are years and years and years in the making, and why it's so difficult for a new hire to come in here and steal so many commitments or signees, what have you. So credit to Shane Beamer, eyeing several years down the road who's going to be an impact player. Met Nyckoles Harbor as a freshman in high school. Now he gets his guy. Big piece of the puzzle. Again, I expect him to play immediately for the Gamecocks and Dow Loggins' offense. Cannot wait to see how that plays out. He is the highest rated prospect to ever sign with South Carolina under Shane Beamer. I know there's only been 3 cycles, and one he came in. It's basically like you hire the guy, and the next week he's got to sign some prospects. But still, an achievement nonetheless, and particularly a 5-star. National television. This is huge for the South Carolina Gamecocks. Here's Shane Beamer one more time on just the impact of being a big winner on a day like this on a national stage, what it does for the Gamecocks.
Could you elaborate a little bit on just what landing a 5-star does to the perception of your signing class and to what you are building here? Because, over the last few days, I just had I heard a lot of people talking about Nyckoles Harbor. So, the fan base is like.
Yeah. No, it's extremely impactful, particularly, when it's a national guy that announces on national television today like Nick did. It resonates not just here in South Carolina, but across the country. People are talking about this. And like I said a minute ago about the number of 2024 recruits that are reaching out to me right now, seeing just looking at Twitter, the amount of people nationally, people that don't even talk about, that cover recruiting, just sports writers in the national media talking about South Carolina football right now. It's great great publicity, so much positivity and energy out there about South Carolina football right now. And then you're right. I've got a ton of text messages from recruits, but then just a ton of text messages from family, friends, whoever, as well about it. So it's. I don't think you can put it into words. It caps off what was already an elite signing class in my mind with the group of young men that we've already brought into the program that signed in December.
And I found it kind of hilarious. A lot of people kind of confused. How is South Carolina doing all this? How are they doing so well? I mean, I'm not naive to the fact that there's NIL out there, but when you beat out Oregon, who, as I understand it, has the best NIL in the country, their NIL is not volunteer-based. It's run by Nike. It's run by, or at least former executives of Nike, and it's obviously tied in strongly with Phil Knight, the founder, owner of Nike, Oregon grad. So when you lose a guy like this, I mean, I don't even know if South Carolina's NIL can outbid for a player of this caliber when you're going head-to-head against Oregon. So I'm sure there's NIL factored in some factor, but I don't think it's an outbidding situation. This is SEC football. This is South Carolina, one of the best fan bases in the country. This coaching staff, I know people think he's hokey. I don't understand the Butch Jones 2.0 comparisons, but hell, all they do is get better and better and better, and the results on the field, you're trying to figure out how the hell are they doing this. I'm particularly thinking of the first year with 4 different quarterbacks, including one that was literally pulled off the coaching GA. They pulled a GA out of the coaching room and put him on the damn field. I mean, that was insane. I never heard of such a thing. But it's creative, and they're getting results down there in Columbia. Now they're getting better and better talent to be competitive. They got some of the best facilities, if not the best, in the country. And there's a hell of a lot to like about South Carolina right now, and this is only going to help the offseason hype. Cousin Shane and I, but particularly Cousin Shane, hyped up them Gamecocks last offseason. I'm just letting you know now, that's just the beginning of the hype for this program. Next, hey, speaking of hype, loving what Lane Kiffin's doing down there in Oxford. I especially love this incredible transfer portal hype video. I mean, this is the coolest hype video I've ever seen. Now, I'm a nerd for the Marvel movies, as so many people are, so I'm going to play this. It's going to get demonetized on YouTube, so we're not even going to make money off this video because we're throwing in this Ole Miss hype video, but it's too good not to share. I hope you're watching on YouTube. Let's kick it over to this Ole Miss transfer portal hype video. All right. I just had to share that. I love it. Features both the transfer quarterback Spencer Sanders and Walker Howard, of course, the new additions to the Ole Miss quarterback room this offseason in the last couple of weeks. Lane Kiffin hit on that. What in the hell are you thinking? And it certainly sounds like Spencer Sanders was told, hey, you're going to be able to come in here and compete. And just kind of Walker Howard could be the ultimate get for Ole Miss in this transfer portal window. That's not to suggest that he'll come in, year one and start or anything, because certainly based on what Kiffin had to say, it certainly seems like Walker Howard is, I don't want to say an afterthought, but it's more about developing him for the future. Let's kick it over to Lane Kiffin, who discusses all these damn quarterbacks he's adding to the roster.
A couple of transfer quarterbacks, including Spencer Sanders, a guy who's really experienced. Can you kind of take us through the decision to bring in those two guys? And is this an open quarterback battle again?
Yeah, I'm very excited about the quarterback room. I was very concerned about it from just pure numbers. You guys could figure that out. And my job is to put together the best roster every year. And, you know, we had a chance to bring these two guys in. I think Jackson did a lot of great things last year. I know Jackson, if you think about when he initially played versus the middle and end, dramatically improved for a young quarterback. We're very excited about him continuing that. And we were able to add two guys, one more of a veteran, kind of if you look at the NFL model, you know, a veteran free agent quarterback, and then a really young one, more of a draft pick. So the quarterback room is dramatically in a much better position than it was a year ago, and that's really our goal with our whole roster and every position every year is continue to improve it, like we talked about what goes out versus what comes in, and trying to win that battle. So that'll be very exciting to see those guys develop and to also, you know, work with the young one too.
And then they almost went this entire press conference, didn't even get asked about Pete Golding till the very end. So Lane Kiffin, again, I'm surprised he didn't kind of reference just, maybe it's just obvious, but his offense going up against Pete Golding's defense the last 3 seasons. You know, those have been some epic battles. Kiffin certainly got the better of Golding the first time, and then the last 2 Pete Golding's defenses have gotten the better of Lane Kiffin offenses. So it's going to be fun to see these two work together. Lane Kiffin says, hell, this is as good as landing a 5-star for our program.
I don't think we've gotten the chance to talk to you about Coach Golding yet. How did that decision kind of take shape, and why is he a good fit?
That was really awesome. We're talking about signing day, you know, and you guys talk about stars. That's as 5-star as you can get. And this has nothing to do with that you're beating Alabama and all of that. This is a great coach that everyone that's worked with him has always said from the beginning, even when he was at smaller places before that he was brilliant, upcoming, and Coach Saban even talked about it as one of the best interviews he's ever seen in the first interview when he interviewed him. So just a very unusual situation that someone at the top of their game, you know, you get to come here. So there were, you know, some family things that helped us there with, you know, his wife's family from here. And so that was great. Kind of like in recruiting, there's advantages. So we're really excited for them to come, he and his family to be here, and you know, to really help us, not just on defense schematically, obviously, like he will, but he's been a phenomenal recruiter too, and one that we've had to go against.
Next, let's kick it on down to Fayetteville. Sam Pittman met with the media here on Wednesday as well to recap. You know, they didn't have a lot of additions or anything. They did get 4-star tight end Shamar Easter. He was already committed, but he had not signed during the early period. I think he wanted to see, you know, how this all plays out with the new offense. Of course, they still had Kendall Browse back then too, but Dow Loggins, now South Carolina's offensive coordinator, was the tight ends coach, so maybe wanted to see what they were going to do with the offense before officially signing. But he's in the boat. Top prospect from the state of Arkansas, number 10 tight end prospect in the country. And according to Sam Pittman, they landed every single in-state player they went after this cycle.
Coach, it wasn't big numbers in Arkansas, but you managed to keep home the kids you offered with Easter finalizing that. How big was it to keep everybody in the state that you offered a scholarship to?
Well, our number one goal each year is to keep everyone that we've offered in the state, and we've done that pretty well. I think we lost one maybe a year ago or 2 years ago, but we want to. Our high school coaches in the state are tremendous to us. We want to be good to them as well. But guys, I just feel like the fourth quarter comes, and I think it means a lot to everybody. Maybe a little bit more to a guy that's been born and raised as a Hog fan, and we certainly have a lot in next year's class that we're looking at. It seems to be a pretty good class in the state, but it means everything to us, and there's a lot of people that help us. That's parents, that's public, that's coaches.
One other quick clip here from Pittman. I love this, but he was asked about getting a lot of lower level football players into his program. Any concern that they will perhaps struggle to be able to compete at the SEC level? And hell, Arkansas is no stranger to getting these guys and bringing them up to this level. So, but as Sam Pittman puts it best, not all D2 athletes are built the same.
It's kind of an interesting group of guys coming from the FCS, D2, and the MAC. Is there any concern at all with them making the jump to the SEC?
Well, there wasn't with us or all those other SEC offers they had. And I didn't mean that. I mean, there was a lot of people didn't, yes, sure there's a concern. I played at Pittsburgh State, If I went in the portal, I'd have stayed in the portal, But there's different guys that play D2 ball, you know what I mean? And, we brought in, the nose guard from Big Ridge, and he seemed to work out okay. There's always a concern of why did they go there in the first place, and each one of them have their stories of why they went there. But talent-wise, no, not talent-wise. And workout, I'm excited for y'all to be able to come watch them in the spring because they're very talented and they're hungry. That's the one good thing about, recruiting guys that are a little bit D2, FCS. They haven't been, given academic money and, they're trying to scrape by and are you paying for my books this year, coach, and stuff like that. Where here it's, they're appreciative, I guess what I should say.
If Sam Pittman would have went in the portal, no one would have taken him as a player, but that's all right because he's one hell of a coach. And now he's surrounded by more excellent coaches here. Dan Enos, of course, the offensive coordinator. This is the first time that Pittman has addressed hiring Dan Enos, bringing in Marcus Woodson, who he calls the best defensive backs coach, and he's now the co-defensive coordinator for Arkansas. Arkansas's pass defense has been a train wreck at Florida State. Marcus Woodson's secondary was arguably the best in the country. Now he's leading the charge for Arkansas's back end of the defense here. Let's get over to Sam Pittman on doing what he can to upgrade his coaching staff this offseason.
I know you've had to have an offensive coordinator idea in your mind for a while with Kendall. So when did you make contact with Dan, and how do you think he's going to meld into what you're doing offensively, like currently? How's his philosophies meld into this?
Well, I guess the first part of your question is as soon as I found out that there was interest for Coach to leave, maybe, I don't know, 10 minutes after that maybe, or 5 or 3. And then, I've had respect for Dan Enos for a long, long time. I talked to Jamie last night. It's just different, when I was here the first time, he was my boss, and now I'm working with him in a different role. And I think you hire good people that are confident in themselves, but yet confident in guys they're working with too. I was very comfortable working with him, and I hope he feels the same about me. Offensively, I think he can answer a question better than me, but Dan has always, here, whether it be at Alabama, whether it be at Maryland, they've always ran an offense around their personnel and their talents, and all that starts at, in my opinion, the quarterback position. Dan obviously knew coming here what we have at quarterback, and we're going to use KJ's abilities to the fullest, and along with, Rocket and all the other guys. But I'm an offensive line coach for a reason. I like to run the ball, and Dan fit in that philosophy as well. But the bottom line is we got to just score more points than they do. And I really like since Dan's left Arkansas, he's been in multiple formations, multiple sets, multiple offensive philosophies that I think he can adjust and will around any of the personnel that we have.
And you've got pretty young on the defensive side with your coaches.
Yeah.
What do you think about the mesh between all the new guys?
Have you seen
and
Marcus Woodson or no? Have you seen him? I mean, he go ahead. No, I'm messing with you, Marcus. When I interviewed Travis Williams, and I think I said this before, so I won't belabor the point, I knew he was the guy. I knew he was. I knew, what's some of the major concerns you have in football right now. One of them is the portal. So you're going to have kids going into the portal, and you're either going to beg an average player to stay, or you're going to say, okay, we're going to go out and have the capabilities upgrading our team and replacing him. That's one of the reasons that Travis, obviously, a very aggressive defensive guy, but right now the portal makes you better. And I've always been this way, but even more so now. You better hire recruiters, and recruiters are usually good people, and. So I did that with him, and then Marcus Woodson is. I thought he was the best defensive back coach in America, and I think what they did at Florida State proved that. But he's a better man, and they're recruiting machines now. I mean, I was trying to watch a basketball game, talk 4, 5, 6 guys last night.
A lot of high hopes on the hill for this coaching staff, and I love the fact that. Because I got to be honest, and I'm not calling out Arkansas fans because this is across the league. When a guy leaves, like Barry Odom did, oh, he sucked. He's terrible. We regress. Just look at our numbers. That doesn't paint the whole story. Barry Odom was the best defensive coordinator by the numbers heading into this last season. And what it really tells you is Arkansas, their roster, was just not elite particularly on the defensive side of the ball. You lose a couple key pieces and the whole thing crumbles. That's where they're at. So what do you do to fix that? You're not going to hire another Barry Odom because it's extremely difficult to get a defensive coordinator of that caliber in here. Travis Williams has got promise. Again, I said this guy's going to be one of the top recruiters in the SEC. Well, that's how you fix it. And that's exactly what Sam Pittman says. That's what he was looking for in his defensive coordinator, a people person, an elite recruiter, to where if we suffer an injury or two, it does not collapse the unit. So, I think that's critical. And if they can upgrade the talent, if Travis Williams is not too big of a downgrade, which I'm not saying he is, because if you look at some of the advanced analytics, Central Florida had a top 30 defense adjusting for roster talent, that's the metric we use here. And Barry Odom, as good as I say he is, his number there was in the 80s. So, potentially it could be an upgrade. I know I'm kind of talking out both sides of my mouth here, but if you're an Arkansas fan, you got to be excited about these hires, particularly if we can upgrade the talent on the roster, which is just paramount. Say it many, many times on this show. I'll continue to say it. The players matter more than the coaches. That's not to say the coaches don't matter, but there's a reason Georgia just went back-to-back. Alabama's always in it. LSU. These rosters are stacked. And Arkansas's got to get better in that regard if they're going to win an SEC West title under Sam Pittman. Now, last one we're going to hit on this episode, just because it's such a hot topic, but I saved it for the end because old Billy Napier down here in Gainesville, he just does not like to reveal much. But right out the gate, as expected, Jaden Rashada was the topic everyone wanted to talk about. What went wrong, and how do we fix these situations? Again, I apologize. Billy Napier doesn't give us much, but this is what he gave us.
Jaden and the connection, from your perspective, what happened?
Well, it's not permissible for me to get specific. I think the big thing here is, as the dust settles, our focus is preparing our team, the group of players that have joined our team. I wish we could get into the specifics, but we're not allowed to. I think reality is the current structure of NIL, with third parties being involved, with agents being involved, with marketing representatives, with lawyers, with collectives. Very fluid, right? And I think a very unique dynamic. I think we're living in a time in college athletics that we'll look back upon. So, but I think ultimately NIL is a strength for the Gators. I'm very pleased with where we're at relative to our current players, all athletes, and what we've been able to get accomplished in a short amount of time.
Elaborate on what you just said on NIL as a strength, because it would be easy for the public perception to look at the headlines and what happened and say, I mean, just to be blunt, Florida's got an issue not living up to their deals. So elaborate on what you just said, please.
Well, I mean, I think I can only speak about our current team, right? Our focus being on our current team, the current athletes that we have. Not only football, but a lot of our other sports have benefited. So, we've got a ton of strengths in that area. We live in a state with 21 million people. We've got 500,000 living alumni. We're surrounded by huge markets, and I think our players are benefiting from that.
So that's a lot to say. It ain't on me, basically, and can't address it, yada, yada, yada. But then he kind of addressed it, so I don't know. I think he's just trying not to get in trouble. But, he was asked an interesting follow-up. How is this NIL supposed to work given situations like this? And Billy Napier, again, maybe he just doesn't want to say too much, but he doesn't have an answer. And that's I'm not trying to call him out, not putting him on the spot, because I think the reality is many of these coaches do not have the answer. And that's why many of them are upset. Many of them are calling for change because, as Billy Napier puts it, we're playing a game we never played before.
How frustrated are you, though, with the fact NIL's become pay for play? I mean, in Destin, you said we don't operate that way, and yet you've been kind of pulled into this national headline. There's this perception of the program now. It's not very positive surrounding NIL.
Well, I think you spend your entire life and entire career trying to establish who you are and how you operate. And I think ultimately I can lay my head down at night based off of that. So time will tell, and ultimately I think the good thing here is I've got a lot of confidence about our leadership, the strategy that we're employing, how it's benefited our team, the group of players that we have on our team. And I think we're going about it the right way.
Are you frustrated, though, by this last 6 weeks?
Well, I think every college football coach in America would tell you they're frustrated. We're living in a fluid dynamic, right? We essentially, there's a lot of good things about NIL, but I think the combination of the NIL and the portal creates a dynamic. You got all the bad things about the NFL, but none of the good things. So, we're all aware of the issues of the parameters we're competing in at this point, right? So this will all, I think as time goes, the market will settle down.
It's supposed to work, though, when there's this third party communicating on your behalf in some ways, or not really, but in essence, they're off doing their thing. You don't have communication control over it.
Yeah.
How's it supposed to work?
It's a great question.
Do you have an answer or a theory?
Well, I think that, I think it's very fluid. That's what I would say. I think that, it's like coming up with a different management system, right? Different checks and balances. I mean, we're talking about a completely different dynamic. We're playing a game that's never been played before.
All right, again, so that's about all we got from Billy on the NIL, but and that's all I got on this episode, a little bit of a shorter one. But like I said, we'll have more coach comments. There was just too many to even get to on this episode. We'll be back one more time to round out the week, finish strong. And I've got some interesting guests lined up for next weekend. Should be one heck of a couple shows here lined up. So be on the lookout for that. I really do appreciate each and every one of you for continuing to check us out during the off season. And if you wouldn't mind, gone this far already, give us that 5-star written review on the Apple Podcast app. Give us a 5-star on Spotify. Subscribe on YouTube. You do any of those, we'll give you a beer koozie. Just reach out to us at thatsecpodcast@gmail.com. But that's going to do it for this episode of the show. We'll catch you on the next one.